be pretty casual, but the idea here is to have a conversation with Micah, who is also here with me. Micah, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. Hey, I'm Micah. I live in Minneapolis, and I did like the audio and music for Wilderplace, and it's all synthesizers. So I'm excited because we've been working hard on it. Yeah, I guess how in depth should I go, Simon?
That's good enough. I mostly want people to know your voice. And then I'm also here with Tom.
I think my microphone's going to be acting.
Minneapolis. I was the main puzzle designer in this game, and I've kind of helped out in other areas with like helping out the narrative and some of the artwork tweaks and stuff, but kind of all over the place. So
yeah, I think as the process has sort of like gotten closer to launch, we've all blended our roles more and more.
Yeah, for sure.
Basically, just trying to get things
Definitely.
finished. Yeah. So I'm going to let's just like start the game a little bit, and then if people have questions, like go ahead and just ask them in here. So yeah, we're starting with the intro cutscene. These illustrations, I probably went through like more revisions of than any other art in the game. I kind of use this as the like testing grounds for how I wanted the visual feel of all the non-in-game art to look. So scattered across my desktop and in notebooks, I have like dozens of slight variations. And I think the game has 5 cutscene sections in total, and then the final cutscene has a bunch of variations. So depending on how you play the game, you're going to get a different ending. And some endings use different illustrations than others. But I'm not going to spoil the ending. As you near your destination, the sounds of wind and birds and bugs give way to an eerie stillness. I think I've had this line in the intro for like from the beginning. I guess I always wanted this game to have a stillness, which I think comes through.
Yeah, there's definitely some stillness in the game.
Yeah. So this is the
It's
very
got
first
kind of a
level.
storybook quality.
Yeah. I'm going to start by
You're gonna show off this whole intro section. Sam, and you see we got a question about how does the wiggliness work?
yeah. The
a great question.
wiggliness uses SVG filters. So basically we use displacement maps, which are like bitmap graphics that map color to position. And so you can apply a displacement map to anything. Like the cliche, like the kind of typical demo of a displacement map is using like a ripple displacement map to apply like a water effect on anything. So what we do is we have a bunch of displacement maps that actually Tom drew by hand, and we cycle through the displacement maps. So a different displacement map shows up every, I think, 2 seconds or something like that. And that's what gives everything a wiggle effect. All right, we're going to move on to the first level. Right now we're just kind of introducing the basic movement. Giving the player like a little taste of what this garden is about. So Micah did the sound. And And I knew from the beginning that I needed help with sound, because that's kind of like the one part of the game development process that I have no idea about. And yeah, I think like right after I asked Micah to help out with the sound, he joined the project and then immediately like rewrote the build system. And I was like, okay, this is great. I got more than just sound out of this deal. So Micah's like, you know, pretty familiar with like the general like tech stack behind Wilderplace. So it's been fun to just have another programmer around to debug things. But yeah, while we like are on this credit screen for Micah, I wanted to ask him a couple questions about how he approached the music. Oh yeah, okay. I'm gonna, before I get into that, I'm gonna answer this user question. Yeah, so I didn't use Canvas for a few reasons. I think the first one was like one of my We're back. I lost audio for a second. Yeah. Can you hear me now? I think we can.
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
You're back.
Yeah, I just used stuff I knew. I'd never made a game before, but I designed a lot of websites before. And I had a really good handle over positioning and animation using HTML. And I knew that if you structure things properly, you can get 60 frames per second animation, no problem, without Canvas. So that's kind of just how I started. Basically, everything you see here is just a flat collection of divs, and everything is positioned with transforms. And so if you use that approach, have a really flat hierarchy, and exclusively position with transforms, you can get really good performance, no problem. There were a lot of challenges with maintaining performance. One of them is like the typical approach to doing like graphics, like bitmap graphics with a website is to use sprite sheets. And so I tried that at first. So every single asset in the game was on a single sprite sheet. And that sprite sheet was over the limit for mobile devices. I think mobile devices have like a 2 megapixel limit for how big a single sprite sheet can be. So then I split that up into a bunch of sprite sheets. So there's one sprite sheet for trees and another for the player. And then what happened was I had all these sprite sheets in the game at the same time. And I think I was running into browser, like, I don't know, memory limits or something like that. But if I had enough stuff in the game at one time, then I would start to drop frames, and basically Chrome couldn't keep up with painting. So what I'm actually doing is on initial load, we take every image in the game and we store it as a data URL. And then I'm actually using directly setting the background image rather than using a sprite sheet with positioning every time we show a new frame, which like violates all the best practices that I ever learned, but it was the only way that I could get things to actually work properly. So there's a little React component with a background image that has a background image URL field that just points to a data URL that updates. And back in the day, if you wanted to do that kind of thing on the web, there would be like a flash of unstyled content as we're loading from one frame to the next. So I managed to work around that by adding like a 1 millisecond animation. So we actually are transitioning between one background image to the next background image. It works okay, even on sort of more low-end devices. So I would say that was like my whole approach here, was like use things I know until they broke, and then find something find something that worked better. But using the DOM to render ended up working just fine. I probably wouldn't do it again. I think if next game I would just use Canvas, because it was kind of a hassle to like make sure everything worked, and it was really easy to make some little tiny change and accidentally break performance. So it was a little fragile, but ended up, I think the final product works really well. I want to talk about
Wilderplace is Wilderplace
yeah.
is like your first. There's a comment, good parenting metaphor, and Wilderplace is like a lot of work went into Wilderplace.
Sure.
Kind of like a child.
Yeah, it'll grow up and then end up resenting me for the rest of its life.
No.
Okay, Micah, I do want to ask you a question though. So what we're listening
Sure.
to right now, how much of this was music that you like played on a keyboard, and how much of this is music that is being generated by the game?
Well, hold on. Let me just mute so I can listen, and so I know what you're talking about. Hold on just a second.
Okay. Alright, we're gonna have a silent.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
okay. So I listened to that music, and well, basically, what's going on is there is a lot of like pre-made little motifs and snippets of note data that I made in with a keyboard in Bitwig, which is like kind of like Ableton, but they're not. None of them are in the same key. So what ends up happening is there's like one track that has the key changes, and then everything gets kind of blended in according to whatever the keys are. So in some sense, all of it is pre-recorded, but in another sense, like none of it is pre-recorded. It's like it's notes that weren't like recorded to go together, being sort of blended together in a way so that they sound a little better together. So I don't know if that answers the question that you wanted to get at, Saman.
Yeah. So I was just hopping around to a few different levels. And then basically there's a bunch of different audio layers that are playing on top of each other. And then depending on the level makeup, like on this level, there's more stones than trees or neutral obstacles. So the stone motif ends up being more dominant. And then if I switch to a level that had more trees, you would get a more dominant, like tree motif.
Yeah, this came together toward the end. It was always like my dream to have the game be reactive, or to have the music be reactive in the game, and it wasn't coming together until the very end. And so I'm really glad it did.
But it did.
Yeah.
It came together really well.
It did.
Yeah.
It did. Oh, I'm really glad to hear that feedback. That the sound matches the visual style.
Yeah, I'm hopping forward to the next level. So the other main collaborator here was Tom, who introduced himself a little earlier. But Tom came to help out with level design. I had basically a full version of the game designed where I did all the levels, and I kind of was attached to it, but I knew it had issues. Like I knew that the difficulty ramp was way too harsh. And
You said I was the only one who could play it.
yeah, Tom. Actually, this is great. Tom was like I would send out like a little demo version to a few friends, and then basically Tom would breeze through all my levels, no problem. And then all the other people that were playing the game were like, yeah, I got stuck on like the third level. So I was like, okay, well Tom, he's really, really good at puzzles, and he also has a little bit of like distance from this game. So why don't I just ask him to help me redesign the game so it's more accessible, and then he can also use like, I don't know, his like particular brain that's very good at thinking about puzzles to also tackle some of the really challenging, complicated levels that come in towards the end. So I guess I wanted to ask Tom. Let's answer this chat question first.
Yeah.
Can you explain your process for designing the difficulty of each level?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a great question. So your direction was basically like make the game as approachable as possible with a gradual ramp in difficulty. And like you said, your first one was like a huge, step up because you've got all these different elements in the game that you have to learn how they work. You've got trees and stones and fungus, and you have these magical abilities tied to them. So I was like, okay, let's figure out an order, basically, where you learn how to use one ability first, and you don't have to worry about the others until later. And it adds on, each chapter in the game adds on new abilities and new NPCs that you encounter. And so I was like, all right, you should get, used to the trees first, because this is a forest, and then the stones, and then the fungus. And so the difficulty was really about teaching the player how to do new things every time you run a new level, and not adding on too much at once. And so the first few levels, you're just moving around, and the first real puzzle, you're trying to figure out what do you do with a spirit, and then later on, you're like, all right, how do I deal with multiple spirits? How do I deal with my new abilities? So the difficulty ramp was trickier later in the game. The first section was like a real pleasure to design, and then it was much more challenging because I didn't want the players to get super duper stuck anywhere in particular.
Yeah, and Tom really stretched the game out. I think I had maybe like 20 levels, and I was like, yeah, this feels pretty good. And then maybe what I was doing in my first 3 levels or so, Tom was doing in like 15 levels. But that approach was really freeing because then we had more space for narrative, and like, this game I think is like kind of peaceful and gradual. And I really wanted a game that was accessible to lots of people while also being hard. And so by stretching out the early parts of the game, I think we're able to do that. So more players are able to kind of get in, and then hopefully they've over time mastered some of the early parts of the game so they don't have to think about those anymore, frees up their brain space to focus on new challenges. And then the last section of the game is like super fun and exciting and like very challenging. Yeah, easy beginning, and then I think things really ramp up.
Yeah, and I was thinking about all these other puzzle games that I love, like Portal or Braid or The Witness or anything like that. And they always start off relatively simple, and you're like, oh, okay, you get these aha moments, and those are like the things that keep you going. And so I wanted to string along a bunch of aha moments.
Yeah. And yeah,
I would love music.
Oh, I was just gonna say, someone asked about a level editor. I really want to do a level editor. Basically, my attitude about level editor, other features that would be post-launch, depend on how much interest there is in the game. If enough people play it and buy it and are like actually gonna spend time with this game, then I'll continue to invest in it. So we'll kind of see how things go. But I'm gonna like show you real quick. So by the way, I'm gonna actually play the game a little bit, but I'm just gonna tease the level editor that I built here. Yeah. So if we now look at the version of the game that has an editor, I can actually just grab anything and move it. So as we're designing levels, we have a lot of flexibility to, and I can add something new here. We can try the level out, and then there's like, as I'm making these changes, they just get saved to disk on our kind of level design file. But yeah, all right. Because I went to the editor, I have to restart this dialogue. So this is where you first get introduced to the garden. This is Junker. He's the warden of the Divine Garden. And he's sort of like your guide early on in the game. So mostly what you're doing is following him. This is the first like real puzzle. We meet a bear. Use your powers to put the spirit in a resting place, like a tree maybe. This is where we have to teach players a mechanic that they've never seen before, which has been a challenge. I think we probably rewrote this particular dialogue like a dozen times or something like that.
Yeah. The intro is important to get people to
Right.
try things, basically. I've shown this game to so many people and they freeze here. They're like, I don't know how to do that. I'm like, well, just try something.
And I think it's mostly like fine to fail here, but it's kind of hard to fail, right? Like right now, I have basically four actions I can take. I can like walk backwards, and then you see a heart disappear. Or if I'm here, I can walk forwards, and then I make a tree. A new entrance reveals.
The very first
Younger
version of the
moves.
level, you couldn't lose.
You couldn't lose at all, right? Yeah, but that was a challenge because people would get through the level and they wouldn't know why.
Exactly.
Yeah. And so we're building upon that first level slightly. It's a pretty tutorialized early on here. But a lot of this came through playtesting. Because again, like the game kind of at the core has some sort of novel gameplay ideas that a lot of players wouldn't have seen before. Alright, so I just learned that I can turn into a tree. And you can see a little frond growing on my head here. And now my head has turned into a couple branches. And we'll just like fail. There we go. We turned it into a plant. Which is, again, it's not so bad. We do want this game to like make dying pretty easy. Like, you know, you can always restart a level at any time. But here we go. Now we've made a couple moves. We can plant our spirit, and we're ready to go. There's a little fork here. I could follow Junker, which is kind of what I've gotten used to doing, so I'm going to do that. And the purpose of this level is really just to like show players, like, hey, this game is non-linear. There's some branching paths. There's not another pathway from here to continue on. You get to know Junker a little better. He's very protective of the forest animals.
He takes himself very seriously.
He takes himself very seriously. I just found a butterfly, and the butterflies are like, you know, they're like the berries in Celeste or something like that. We have another question here. What kind of issues did you encounter while trying to make the music sounds interactive or responsive with the gameplay? I'll let Micah talk to that, but there's lots of ways to think about that question, like making sure timing was right, or making sure the sound effects match what's happening on the screen properly. So Micah, what issues did you encounter while trying to make the music sound interactive or responsive?
Plenty of issues. I guess like one of the most difficult things was like that it's kind of an organizational challenge to think about all the ways that the music could be interactive and then pick like a few of those and run with it, because there's so many possibilities. So I would say for me that was like maybe the biggest challenge, was like settling on which dimensions of, because the game is using Redux for state, and then the audio, which is, you know, for people who aren't familiar with Redux, it's basically like this stream of information about what's happening that you can tap into, and there's so much like interesting stuff in there. So I wanted to use all of it, but then at some point I had to say like, okay, I can't use everything. I have to actually focus in on something. So in the end, the thing that ended up being kind of the focus was the balance of the board. And when I say balance, I'm talking about like the amount of rocks or trees or fungi that are on each board, and then Saman had made a lot of variations of those, like visual variations of those elements, and so I created some different synthesizer parts that go with each visual variation, and then they're all blended depending on which variation of which kind of plant or rock or fungus is on each board. But yeah, the organization was the biggest challenge, let's say, for me.
Yeah. Here, this is the first time a spirit talks back to you. And they have kind of like this weird glitchy font. They're kind of like the forests. They're like annoying. Yeah, they like to mess with you. So here, I turned into a plant, and this level is kind of about realizing that other actors on the board have agency, and so timing can really matter. So like what I did last time is I kind of walked around here. Well, actually, no, I'm gonna win this time. But let's do this again. I think if I go like this and then go back, yeah. So the spirit latched onto this deer, but now I'm too far from the sprout, so I actually can't plant the spirit. What I have to do here is I have to move towards the spirit. And now we can move forward.
I want to mention one more thing about how the audio came together. Like Saman and Tom, there was a point where they shifted from kind of just thinking about individual levels to like really doing world building, and like they would have all these flashcards that they would lay out on the floor, and it was this. I mean, if you got a chance to catch like the level editor, like the world map, it's so vast, and somehow or another those guys just could remember which flashcard went where, and like how everything was connected, and you know, the different clusters of levels, and sort of how they shifted, and different elements would come in and out, and that was really, really helpful for me to sort of see how all those guys were doing the world building stuff, and like kind of trying to synthesize the pieces into something more coherent. That was I drew from that a lot.
Yeah, I think that was a fun part in production, honestly. It was a big step having a world map that was all cohesive.
Yeah. We laid down flashcards on the ground. Like took up the whole living room. Oh, I wanted to go back to M. Bullington's question here. Did you go through a lot of iterations of finding the voice? Or was it always kind of clear? And like the general tone of the game, I'd say like I look at most of my kind of narrative creative works as sort of part of a single universe in a way. So I think about the comics that I made in the past, and like I really like kind of dry humor, and like again, the game has this stillness, but then there's sort of like, you know, if you look close enough, you start to see how alive it is. And I think I try to think about that with everything I make. Like start with something still or something understated, and then let the depth come through kind of paying attention to it. And so yeah, like all these stories sort of unfurl over the course of this game, and so I think the voice is kind of connected to maybe stuff that I figured out when I made a lot of comics. That's probably where the voice came from more than anything.
We spent a lot of time working on that later in the game too, polishing up the narrative and giving the characters more backstory and stuff, and more uniqueness.
Yes. And Tom actually helped out a lot with the writing. Tom would design a level and then like throw in some dialogue or create the seed for like a little story. And a lot of that stuff like was great and just stayed in the game.
And they asked you a lot of questions too, to be like, what are the robots doing? I mean, spoilers, there's robots, but I was like, why are they in this forest? What are they doing? Just asking simple questions kind of leads to new, good dialogue and narrative.
Yeah.
there's some pretty good knee slappers in there too. Like, I think I remember there being a point when we were questioning like how much humor should be in the game, and I don't remember. I think Salmon, you came to a realization that you didn't want the game to be too self-serious, and I feel like at that point, we just kind of rolled with what was in there, kept refining it.
Yeah, right. Okay, so we've made it to the Celestial Gate, which Junker kind of, in the previous, a couple levels ago, said that I needed to go there because the founders have a message for me. So let's see what happens when I walk onto this gate. Oh, by the way, a little like playtest lesson here was that people would think this gate was an obstacle for a long time. So I was like, oh, let's make it pink. Then we have to animate it, and then finally it kind of like started to click. But yeah, I can walk under here. Restore the garden and uncover the source of imbalance. And then return. Sounds easy. Oh, there's a spirit here. Alright. Oh, and Ryan, you asked about the butterflies being an achievement. In a way, I was like, I didn't want this game to have too many like kind of cheap carrots, I don't want people to play it for the achievements, but I like having a little extra layer of challenge. So maybe you go in and you play through the second time, and this time you try to get all the butterflies. And yeah, there's some kind of little bonuses at the end of the game if you get all the butterflies. How many hours I spent on the game? Oh man, I have truly no idea. I started working on the game in like 2019. I took a 1-month sabbatical from work to focus on the game, and that was kind of like my test run to see like, oh, am I capable of making a video game? Do I have the discipline to do this? Asking kind of some of those questions. But I took a month and I worked like 10-hour days every day for like a month, no problem. And I was like, okay, yeah, if I wanted to do this, I could do it. And I think during that 1-month sabbatical, I came out of it actually with a working version of Wilderplace. So a lot of the core engine was kind of like finished after that 1 month. On my blog, I have there's a few posts from that period, like early 2019. And then like actually polishing the game up and like getting it to a point where I felt comfortable about releasing it. That took like what is it, 2022 or something like that? Over 3 years. But a lot of that time I was working on it part-time while working a full-time job. And then I took another 6 months off to work on the game full-time. So I basically had 7 full-time months on this game, and then like 2 years worth of like, a handful of hours a week. But it was a lot of work. The most tedious part of the game was all the art. Everything is hand-drawn. And I made thousands of drawings, and then I would like draw a tree and I wouldn't be happy with it, and then I have to go and redraw the tree and rescan it in and then like re-Photoshop it. So using traditional art at kind of the core of the game was like really time consuming. I'm happy with how it turned out, and over time I kind of got more efficient with the process, and I also started cheating more. I think like towards the end I used a lot more Photoshop because I had like figured out how to use Photoshop to get stuff that looks close enough to hand drawn, which was kind of hard at first. But towards the end, I definitely was cheating a lot more than the beginning to create certain variations or different poses and things like that. I'm gonna jump to a different section of the game now. So I'm gonna open up my editor. Okay, I'm actually gonna. What is the? Oh yeah, let's answer that question. What does my pipeline look like for drawing and importing? Yeah, I would say I used kind of. Okay, let's just start from the beginning. I did all the early sketching on paper in a sketchbook. So I'd work out designs, like I worked out the main character's design on paper in a sketchbook. And then I got a Remarkable at some point in the process of developing that game, which is a e-ink tablet. And then I completely switched over to using an e-ink tablet to do all the sketching. Because mostly it had copy-paste, which made, like, for example, doing character design a lot faster. And I like the feel of the pen. It feels enough like paper, and it's not backlit, so it doesn't feel like I'm using a computer. It feels like I'm using a piece of paper. So it could pretty easily just replace a notebook for me. But the Remarkable is the thing that I... actually, do I have my Remarkable? I can... somewhere. Yeah, I do. Let me just pull up a couple sketches, and you can see like what those look like. Here. Yeah, and I did use Photoshop, so I would take a Remarkable drawing and then not scan it, but like sync it with my computer. Then I'd open the Remarkable drawing up in Photoshop. I'd clean the Remarkable drawing up, and then I would print the Remarkable drawing on like a black and white laser printer, and then I would use a light table to redraw the printed Remarkable drawing that had been photoshopped, and then I scanned that back in, and then I photoshopped the final product again. So it was a pretty involved process, right? Going from Remarkable to digital, or to Photoshop, then to paper, and then using a light table to trace that and do a pencil drawing, and then taking the pencil drawing, scanning that back in again, and then doing like a final pass in Photoshop. It was a process, but I'm happy with the results. Okay, so here we do have like some notes here, and you can see like I think this is a sketch on the Remarkable of like a couple little I think kind of decorative illustrations that come in later in the game. And then a lot of cases, these little decorative illustrations, like I'll have pages of variations or animation frames, and doing that stuff on Remarkable was a lot easier because of copy paste. Let's see. Oh, I'm gonna find a good page because I want to show this. And then I have a whole pipeline after I Photoshop everything that automatically exports and resizes everything, and that's just some JavaScript scripts that are taking Photoshop files and generating a bunch of smaller versions for different screen resolutions and doing some other touch-ups. Yeah, here's a good example of like. Here are the original mushroom drawings for one of the mushroom sets. You can see that these look pretty similar to the final product, but yeah, those are scanned in. I think with those I didn't really Photoshop them much because they're simple. Printed, redrawn, scanned again, and then finally cleaned up in Photoshop. Okay, I'm gonna go back to the game. All right, cool.
And just like to sum up Saman's process here, like early on when I started helping, like it was very clear that this is a hand-drawn game. Like that's the goal. It's like everything is hand-drawn. It's supposed to have this consistent aesthetic of being hand-drawn. And later on, Saman caved in and added like some visual effects. But early on, like that kind of clean hand-drawn look was like very much at the core of the game's aesthetic. So the arduous process, I think, comes out of that like goal.
Yeah. I skipped ahead to a different section of levels. And so these levels are maybe
Wait,
like
Saman, we can't see the game.
You can't see the game right now?
Stream. Oh, now there it is.
Okay, good, cool. Yeah, Micah, we're a little delayed, so.
Makes sense.
Yeah, this is a set of levels that comes in about a third of the way through, and by this point of the game, you have the ability to push stones. So this is like the most classic like Sokoban mechanic. Let's start over. So this starts to get into a few other systems in the game. One of them is that each obstacle type. So here we have stones, we have a plant, and we have a fungus. Enchants the ground near that obstacle. So you can see next to every stone, there's like a little small stone. And next to the fungi, we have these little fungus sprouts. And then the tree doesn't have any sprouts right now. And there's like a rock, paper, scissors system here, where if you have a fungus next to a plant, the fungus takes priority. So you can see in between here, there's a fungus rather than a plant. And then plant takes priority over rock, rock takes priority over fungus. So lots of levels end up being about arranging pieces just right or placing things in the right sequence so every spirit has a home. So I actually haven't played this particular level in a really long time, so let's see if I can figure it out. So we have a plant spirit here, and I have nowhere I can put this right now. So at least I know I need to move the rock out of the way so I can put the plant spirit somewhere. But then I also have a stone spirit and a fungus spirit. But to get to the fungus spirit, I could go this way. Let's try this. I missed out on the butterfly by doing that though. Oh well. Now I need to push the rock. Okay. Yep. I think I got it. Figured it out. Yeah. There we go. So we cleared the level. All the animals have been cured. All the spirits have been placated. I have undo now, which comes from a monument that we didn't play. But let's move on. Oh, if people have more questions, feel free to just ask them in chat. Otherwise, I'm going to play through a few more levels. We didn't have a set end time here, but I'm good to just keep going here. Although, definitely ask questions, because I think having me, Tom, and Micah all here to talk about this game is like something that y'all should take advantage of.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. Here we have a new character that I don't think we've seen yet. This guy. Looks like he's trapped between two plants. Oh god. No, I'm trapped. Because Junker, what is he doing? Why is Junker moving? Ah. Okay, there we go. I died. Okay, we're gonna have to try that again. Oh, we got a good question. Yeah, what was the biggest change I made based on player feedback? I made a lot of changes. One of the interesting ones that I never expected that I would have to make. Is like the game can be played on a keyboard, and it just seemed so obvious to me that the top right of the game was up, the up key on the keyboard, right? Like I'm pressing up right now and going up, but half the players that tested the game thought that up was the top right, and they would keep traveling in the wrong direction. And I'm like, I really wanted to just be like, no, you have to learn that the top right is up. But eventually I gave in, and I was like, no, actually, if you use the keyboard on the very first level, we prompt you with the choice. Do you want to use
Northeast or Northwest?
Yeah, Northeast or Northwest, right?
I think that's a very good change.
That was definitely a change based on player feedback. Another big change I made based on player feedback, which was just interesting to me. I'd say lots of these changes were like me taking things that I was attached to with the game and like accepting that I had to sort of let go. Another one is the player movement if I'm using a gamepad. So I'm using a gamepad right now, and it's really snappy. Like I just kind of push the joystick in the direction I move, and then I move. But for a long time, gamepad-based movement used like a two-phase approach, where first you would sort of move the joystick in the direction you wanted to move. The player would enter like this pending animation state, and then if you slowly moved the joystick back to the center, you would cancel the move. Because I wanted like, oh, it's this careful game where each move is really deliberate, so I wanted players to be able to like be halfway through a move and then realize something and then move back, the way if you're playing chess and you put your hand on a piece and you want to take your move back. I just liked that interaction. But everyone who played it was like, yeah, it feels really clunky and slow. Like, why is moving so slow? So then I was like, all right, fine. I've heard this from pretty much everyone who played with a gamepad. I'm just gonna make it so if you push the D-pad in a direction, you move. So it simplified things. I mean, like actually it simplified the code and everything a lot. And I haven't heard any complaints about that since. But
it's a lot better than it was.
Right. I'm still attached though. I liked it before. All right, let's see if we can beat this level, because last time what did I do? I picked up the bottom plant and then I didn't have a good place to replant the plant. So let's go this way this time. Yeah, that's a little cleaner. Now we're talking to a little robot. What games was I playing during the making of Wilderplace? Oh, yeah. I mean, there definitely were games that I played because they seemed similar to Wilderplace. I can't think of too many off the top of my head, though.
I actually have some games that influenced my design, some puzzles. I was playing a lot of Celeste. I was playing through all the B-sides and C-sides, and I was like, oh man, this game's so good, it's so tight, it has such a great, difficulty curve, basically, so I was trying to emulate that a little bit. And also I was playing a bunch of indie puzzle games, like, I think it was called Manifest Garden was the one you recommended. It was kind of like following through fractals and stuff, but
oh yeah,
I think we were both playing Elden Ring for a hot minute, and then we're like, or was that just me?
Well, I didn't have anything to play it on, but I just got an Xbox, so now I'm gonna give it a try.
I gave it a try for like 30 hours, and I'm like, I want to go back to playing indie puzzle games. It's very long. It is good. I need to get back to it, but
love it.
Something about a game you can finish is really nice.
Yeah. I don't know. I got really into like auto battlers. That's like the trendy game right now. I got really into Super Auto Pets and SNKRX. Yeah.
So
I don't know. I don't play. Oh, sorry, Micah. You can answer.
I was gonna share that my confession is that I don't really play games very much. But I will say that, like, when I was working on the music, that film Koyaanisqatsi, like the music in Koyaanisqatsi, really inspired me for this game. I don't know why. You might hear a little of that.
That's cool.
Yeah, I actually love that, Micah, you don't play games. I think that was like a really positive thing to bring to this, because I felt like you weren't attached to making music that sounds like a video game. Yeah, you're.
Yeah, I don't really know what that is.
Yeah, right. I like that. So
I did play Descent as a child. And that has pretty cool music.
The like old Mac shareware game, right?
Exactly. I played Mac shareware games.
Yeah.
That was what I had access to.
That's the inspiration.
That's the inspiration that I brought.
All right. So the robot destroyed a rock and then ran away. So he left us with a little bit of a messier puzzle here. And I also trapped Junker, which is not that big of a deal. But so now we have a plant spirit and then some plants, but I don't have enough spaces to like travel. So what I'm gonna have to do here is like create a little bridge. Because fortunately I have this absorb spell that lets me pick up plants, create a little chain. Now I think I'm safe. Yeah. Cool. Alright, and I also untrapped Junker. Yeah, so that was an example.
Another comment.
Oh yeah?
I just want to make another comment on the user feedback. Like during the beta, people gave really good feedback, and it was like kind of painful to watch Saman like agonize over all the complex like feedback that people gave. And like, I don't know. It was really interesting to see that process.
Yeah. I mean, I think that part is so interesting as a designer, because I have this background in product design, which I think with product design you really have to take this approach where you set your ego aside. You know, working in a more like kind of non-games environment where you're building. I've mostly built software tools. Like my preferences don't matter at all, right? I'm there to like help users accomplish their goal, whatever, and have a good time doing it. But with games, I'm like, wait a second, I actually get to like have some perspective here and like decide which feedback I care about and which feedback I don't care about in this way that I'm not really comfortable with. It's like, I think my identity before games was always like, I'm an artist, right? I purely just do exactly what I want to do and I don't care what anybody thinks. Or I'm like a product designer and, you know, my ego is not considered at all. But games, it's like, there's both. So I have to like make these harder decisions. And so I don't know, I found that very refreshing and exciting, so. Yeah.
Did this feel like a auteur project? Or like a collaborative project most of the time?
I think I kind of started it with this idea that I was going to build everything from scratch myself, you know?
Yeah.
And I kind of like got far enough with that approach that I was like, yeah, okay. I mean, I could keep going here, but like I know that it would be way better if I brought in some help. And so like it still has a little bit of that like, you know, singular vision flavor in the art mostly, I'd say. But you know, I think so much of this game is like Tom and Micah, not just me.
Well, I mean, one thing that I really enjoyed about working on this game is that like, Saman, you pretty much gave me free reign over the audio stuff. So in some sense, like, I got to do that thing that you're talking about of just exploring and challenging myself, but of course in the context of like some constraints of wanting it to sound good and, you know, fit, and taking your feedback and taking other people's feedback. But like there was something really refreshing about that opportunity that I really wanted to take advantage of, like just to build it from scratch. And there's not many scenarios that I can imagine where I would get that chance if I didn't make it for myself. So that was great. I don't know if you felt that way, Tom, about the level stuff.
I felt very much like I had free reign. And I was kind of surprised that you decided to make the game from scratch and program everything instead of using an engine, because I was like, oh, that's just what you do when you want to make a game, you know? So,
Yeah. Right.
I mean, someone's built already, and you know, has like all these tutorials and all these other people who can maybe help you out if you run into problems. But
Right.
that
Yeah.
was one of the small difficulties. But I can also see why.
I learned so much during this process.
Yeah.
It's ridiculous.
Right. That was what it was about for me too. Was learning.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
So that's kind of why I made my own engine, because I was like, hey, I want to figure out why game programmers make the choices they make by making bad choices and then
Mhm.
dealing with the consequences. So, you know, in that level, I think this game was a big success.
We made some amazing bad choices.
Oh yeah, yeah.
They're like very interesting.
I mean, we shipped. You know, how many teams take on a project like this and use Unity and then never ship, right? It's like you know, I think that there are also challenges
That's true.
if you do use an engine.
Yeah,
But
there are several games that backed on Kickstarter in like
Yeah.
2014 that are still
Right.
in production.
Yep. Oh,
Like,
by the way,
I'll
I got
share-
trapped on this level. I just want to mention, I was so close, but this rock is in the way. This is like the classic Sokoban fail, but we
It's a
have to-
devious,
we
it's a
have to
devious
figure it out.
puzzle.
Yeah. These are good.
That's a good question here, Simon. You
Oh
said.
yeah. If I do it again, would I make my own engine again? It totally depends on the kind of game I'm making. I feel like I have the bones of like basically a game engine here with Wilderplace, and if I were to make another puzzle game or similar game, I think I would pull a lot of that stuff out. Because I know how it works and I can be really productive, and like taking this basic concept of Wilderplace and like adding more content or like changing the behaviors of entities in the game, like that stuff is like, I really love the way it works in Wilderplace. Like I love that I can write like functional reactive code style and like have unit tests for for everything, and like this is the way I get to program with this game I really love. And I figured out like the hard parts, like doing animation and timing and queuing, that like those things are really hard, I think, with that style of programming. And I kind of figured out patterns that work well enough. So yeah, I mean, I think if I were making a similar game, I would lean on what I already have. But I would never be able to release this game on Switch or on PlayStation, or you know, like there's limits to what platforms this game would be able to run on because it is using the web. So that's like a reason to use an engine for sure. Or if I want to do something 3D, I would just absolutely use an engine.
For sure.
Yeah.
I want to just comment on the engine. Like something that's really special about this, as far as I know, and I'm sure there are other people who are doing this too. But like a lot of game engines are using like entity component system, or like very. And I'm not actually too familiar with how that works, but my understanding is that a lot of game engines are very much like based on this certain way of handling state, whereas Wilderplace is like very kind of, I mean, it's using Redux, and it's very like stream based in a way, and that was really challenging and exciting, and I would love to keep exploring what's possible with that way of doing things. Like I know on the music side, like it was so satisfying to be able to like whip things together like so quickly once the building blocks were in place, because everything just composed and composed and composed, and you could just keep building on top of the streams of the data that were coming in. You could just add more layers of kind of reactive stuff, and that eventually got really complex. And then we started to learn, like, I imagine it was similar on the visual side, that there are limits to that, and you have to, you know, there's challenges to it as well. But I would love to keep exploring this style of game engine, and maybe somebody else wrote one that's like more polished that I want to discover and try.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that I would maybe do is like, I don't know, this is getting a little in the weeds on the technical side, is like not use the principles of like Redux and React, but maybe not use those libraries. because I don't need general purpose stuff so much. I need kind of specific things. I need to be able to manipulate like a list of entities on a board, right? Which, you know, so like certain patterns, like the redux react hook is like, I could probably find something simpler that I have more control over. Yeah, but basically like the event system that you use when you're writing Redux code is really great for games, for turn-based games. I think it would be a challenge for real-time games, but you probably could do it with like using a queue and like, you know, pushing stuff to the queue, and then you got a game loop. I'm sure you could do real-time games with a similar system, but.
And just to take a step back from like the technical details, one thing I would say is that their game engine is very non-linear. Like, things are responding to what's happening in like this. There's like these rules that are set up that when something happens, everything else responds to, you know, according to the kind of dynamics that are baked into the game. And like, so in some sense, it's almost like a simulation.
Yeah.
But it's like reversible.
Yes.
And that's like really, really fun. And I think there's a lot of possibilities for expressing different ideas when you're coming from that point of view. When it's not just all like, oh, these are the very simple linear constraints. Put everything together, like this happens and this happens and then this happens. No, there was a lot of emergent stuff that you can't really predict that would come about in the game. And it would be interesting to hear, Tom, like to hear your take on like how that affected the level design. I know there were things that, and Sam and you too, like things that kind of grew beyond like expectation because it's so much like a simulation.
Yeah, I'm playing some of the more static levels right now because I really love some of the static levels, but the game does have like really cool emergent patterns, and you get these different actors that have different goals, and they start to play with each other, you know, and then you kind of just are someone passing through in some of the later levels. And I really love that, and that's very intentional. You know, like there's a section of the game where you're passing through a drone camp, and then the drones and the loggers are like fighting each other, and you're just trying to maintain balance and kind of continue on your course.
Oh yeah, that one's amazing.
Right, yeah, so there's a bunch of levels kind of like that.
Wait, are you talking about the level where there's like a feedback loop, Sam?
Well, there's a few that kind of are similar to that. I think this level is getting me here. I'm
the
close.
tricky one?
I'm close, but...
Micah, to answer your question, it was difficult to design around some of the interactions between NPCs, especially when they're like more than two screen, because you try to design a puzzle to teach you something basically, and oftentimes the puzzle will be either way too hard or way too easy depending on how many possible solutions there were. So it took a lot of trial and error, honestly, to find that sweet spot.
I'm gonna play a different level.
Yeah. I mean, you guys kind of had to quarantine some things. Like, there were some things that you just couldn't, determine if it was going to happen, and you just sort of had to manage, like, the unpredictability. I don't even know what the examples would be of that.
I mean, I'd say yes and no. Like, everything is totally deterministic in this game. So, but we don't know how stuff is going to interact. But once you put everything together, like, the same thing happens every time. But yeah, there are certain patterns of like things on the same board that would kind of get really unmanageable, like spiral out of control and just make the level totally unbeatable. That was pretty easy to do with some of the entities. So I'm gonna play another level here. This is quite a bit further into the game. Here we have a toad man, and then a different drone. This is an attack drone. And I'm just gonna try to play this level a little bit. This is actually in the drone camp section that I was talking about before.
Can you describe what these entities do, how they react to you?
Well, let's kind of first watch. So okay. I moved. Attack drone's here. Toadman moved towards the fungi. I'm gonna move again. There. I just got my position swapped with the fungi. Drone is here. I'm here. I know that this toadman is gonna move to the nearest fungi and then swap my position with the fungi. So let's see if I go here. Okay. Now I'm far away from the fungi because I got swapped while I wasn't very close to the toadman. I can like... Okay. Bam. I fainted. There's no dying in Wilderplace. But I did get zapped by the attack drone, so I know that can happen. Let's see, let's try again. Okay, this time let's go to the toadman.
The toadman is hilarious, by the way.
Yeah.
This is a difficult level too. It's hard to solve. I get stuck on this one sometimes when I'm playing through the game.
Okay. So now I'm in a safer position here. I have this new spell too, which is the mask. It lets me enter like this sort of dream world where everything else is sleeping. And in the dream world, a couple things happen. I can freely move through obstacles. And there's a little counter at the top here. So I have 3 moves. But I'm in trouble right now actually because if I move, I probably shouldn't have moved there. I'm gonna undo that. I don't want to end up next to the attack drone when I'm out of all of my dream world moves. So let's just try to like get away, but we maybe don't want to get too far away because we still need to exit the level. Okay. So I wonder if I can get to this fungi without getting killed. I don't know. I think I'm in trouble here. Yeah. And then thank you for teleporting my corpse. Alright. Let's try again. So I think like the very first maneuver, which is to do this, that's right. And then we can go here. Let's try to go... No. So I went here last time. What if I go over here? No, we're in the same position again. Yeah, that's not gonna work.
Do you want to hint at all? There's no hint system in the game, but...
Let me try one more time. Maybe I'm just pretending to be bad at this, to put on a show.
Oh, that's true.
Let's see.
I mean,
I'm actually
playing and talking sounds very hard.
Yeah.
Like,
okay, I need to.
There's this game has a flow to it that you can get into that's like kind of similar to.
Yeah.
I mean, look, you all probably play more games than me, but there's definitely a flow in this game, and I can't imagine narrating what I'm doing while playing.
What if I go back here? There's another tool I have in my arsenal here, which I haven't showed off yet. So if I go here, yeah, we're in the same kind of bad position again. Where we're gonna. If I'm next to a stone, I can push the stone, which is a way to skip a turn, even if there's no destination. Okay, that seemed to do something. The toadman swapped positions. Okay, now I might be free. I don't know if the exact mechanics of that were clear to everybody, but I did a little juggling between myself and the toadman. Oh god. Okay. That was bad. Okay, wait. Ah. No. Okay. Okay, I actually have to be really careful now about where I go next. Okay. Okay, I'm in trouble again. Okay, Tom, I'm gonna have to ask you for A hint.
Or
Yeah,
hints.
it is definitely hard to play and talk at the same time.
No, for sure.
Mad
I think my only hint was
for all the streamers out there.
I couldn't do it either. My only hint was to push a rock as your first move as you enter the stage, because it kind of forces the other NPCs to move, one square over, which makes things a little better timing-wise later on.
Right, okay, except now I'm still messed up here. Okay. I think this level does have multiple solutions.
I'm sure it does.
Yeah.
But it is a tricky one, it takes a lot of trial and error on this one for me.
So, I have a weird habit with this level, because I was using it to test sound a lot, but I can't explain how I beat it, because it was this subconscious pressing buttons and listening to sound. But I seem to remember that I would somehow
Okay, let's see. Okay. I feel like I'm in good shape right now. Come on.
Yeah?
Wait. What happens? No? Okay. We might be okay though.
This brings me back to when I was designing this level, and a lot of the time I was like, I don't know if it's solvable. The level looks cool and it has all the pieces I want to be there, but I don't know if
we're gonna try something
physically beatable.
No. Why did I pick the hardest level to?
I don't know.
Okay.
It's a good demonstration of just how chaotic the game can be, even with 2 NPCs. And adding more and more just makes it that much harder to plan a puzzle around.
Yeah. What, Tom, were your favorite NPCs to design levels for, and which did you find to be the most challenging?
That's a good question. I guess my favorite ones to design for were the first chapter of NPCs with the woodsman, because I was learning how to design puzzles, and it was so charming to have these things that were funny to me happen just by playing around different designs. One of the first levels is you save a woodsman, and then he I wrote some dialogue. He's thank you. It could be spirits anywhere, and then he immediately chops down a tree and gets attacked by a spirit. I didn't plan that. I was oh my god, this is great. And so that was one of my favorite sections to design.
Times when you do something.
It was learning how to work with narrative. Yeah, that's my jam. It's indie games with cool art and fun narrative, and the later sections were kind of repeats, but adding different twists on them, and with the robots and the fungus foragers. The most challenging levels were definitely the ones with these unpredictable characters like the Toadman and the Attacktron, and also the demons were especially tough because they are incredibly destructive towards the layout of the board. They move things around, they tear things up, and then you have to trap them, which is a really challenging thing early in the game.
I got out.
You did.
Oh my god. I'm the best Wilderplace player in the universe.
You didn't
I had to sacrifice the Toadman though. That was sad.
Yeah. You didn't get the butterfly. I think you should
seem to remember the Toadman getting killed.
Yeah.
This level.
Those attack drones, they're ruthless.
Should get a bat enemy for that.
Well, and the music is harrowing when the attack drones are after you, so that adds another level of intensity.
Right. It's nice and peaceful again now. I'm gonna skip to a different section and play, I think, one more level, and then we're gonna call it. Okay, there's another question here. Did you have a way to rate how hard puzzles were, and did you think about the change in difficulty over the course of the game? Yes, we did. Okay. One big lesson learned here, and I'm still kind of processing this, is that I instrumented the whole game. I added analytics for everything. So I knew for every level exactly how many retries every player had. They're anonymous, but so I could list average retries by level, and actually get some hard numbers on, okay, what levels are hardest. And that was a little bit helpful for a little while, but I could never get the analytics to work once the game was on Steam. Like Steam, for whatever reason, launching through Steam just blocked all my analytics. And I was like, part of me doesn't really even feel super comfortable about having analytics in the live game anyways.
No.
So I just cut them completely. There aren't any analytics. And we just trusted each other and feedback from the beta testers. So we rated how hard puzzles were based on that small group of players. So MC Whitmore, you were one of them, who sent us videos of you playing the game. And then just by kind of watching those videos and getting a feel for, okay, which levels are players kind of like spending the most time on, we would go make decisions around, okay, what should be maybe simplified a little bit, which levels are actually appropriately hard. And then for some of those appropriately hard levels, the choice was like, how do we make sure it's paced correctly, and maybe next to a couple other levels that aren't so difficult, or like giving this game a series of essentially like difficulty arcs. So you get a new concept introduced to you. You have maybe an easy puzzle that uses that concept, and then you have a slightly harder puzzle that uses that concept. Then you have another puzzle that maybe requires you to use some lesson you learned from an older level and combine that with the new thing, and then that level gets a lot harder. So I think it's like, yeah, sort of the rhythm of the game really mattered to us, making sure that levels felt hard at the right times. Tom, do you have more to say about that?
A little bit, yeah. I think one thing I kept an eye on was, are any levels in particular really punishingly difficult?
Yeah.
Are people saying, like, this isn't fun? Like, I'm definitely going to change those and cut those. And there were a couple sections that were just tedious, and so there wasn't so much a difficulty curve to worry about, but just like is it fun? That's what I really focused on during polishing.
Yeah.
And it kind of brought up some puzzles that, it was too difficult or required too much luck to kind of figure out. But it's all about, which ones are enjoyable.
Yeah.
Something I observed of the process that you guys went through is that, like, early on, Tom, you were kind of dissecting all the game mechanics and making these levels that were like kind of illustrating different pieces of the game.
Right.
And from my point of view, you continued that process through even when it started to get more complex. And we're just, I think both you guys were very mindful of like which dynamics were coming out in a certain level, and like, had they been introduced in a way that was sort of, gentle enough but still challenging, and I saw that as being a really important aspect of like gauging, the difficulty curve and like how it evolved through the game. It was just that
I've definitely got
an educational aspect.
I've got a Google spreadsheet somewhere. I wonder if I should just pull it up and be like, this is what I was trying to teach. Oh man, we got so many.
Tom has amazing Google spreadsheets.
Yeah, man. I do this for work too, so
it's the only way. Except I don't use Google Spreadsheets. Instead of using Google Spreadsheets, I'll just build a feature into the editor. I'll just program my own spreadsheet.
There you go.
Same thing though.
My spreadsheet was the Bitwig audio project of all of the different random noises.
Yeah.
It looks like a giant spreadsheet.
I think it kind of functioned as a mini producer in the game, being like, all right, these sound effects are great. Now you got to tweak this and that.
Right.
I got it in my spreadsheet.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Tom really helped me out with the game audio, like just providing that kind of big picture perspective of like where things were fitting in the actual contents of the game, like because I was so focused on a lot of my time was spent on the audio engine, and then at some point it was like we got to finish the game, and I had to really switch gears to actually composing and like putting content that we liked into the game, and I think that like the process that Tom and Saman kind of had developed was just super supportive for me in sort of like being able to fit the audio in.
I remember you said the one doc I made was helpful, where I wrote down like all the chapters of the game and their kind of like moods and what.
That became, so Tom made this document that had like a sort of big picture summary of all the sort of
each
chapters, each section, because it's not really quite linear, but it's kind of linear. But there's like different sections with different kind of narrative movements and moods and styles and actually, like, I have a copy of that where I just like sat down one day and like wrote out some chord progressions for each section, and that just became the kind of core of each section was like these chord progressions, and then depending on which style of plants and fungus and rocks and illustrative tiles, like in this section there's like the hands, that's like one particular style of, they're called neutral obstacles, but like those four things determined the music that's playing right now, but then the actual chord changes come from these chord changes that I wrote down on Tom's sheet, because the sheet really just captured like the essence of this section and the next section, and it's interesting how much overlap there was between the level design and the rest of the
music. Yeah,
the music art.
Yeah, I want to talk about this level a little bit. So this level is really towards the end. I wanted to play one of these later levels, which is maybe a little spoilery, but that's okay. It's fun. At this point, you have a spell corresponding to each obstacle. So you can uproot trees with the absorb spell. You can push rocks. You can enter the spirit world with fungi. And then there also are these like blessed versions of all the obstacles. So you can see there are actually a row of 3 here. There's a blessed fungi, a blessed plant, and then a blessed stone. These take the basic mechanic of each humor type. That's what we call the stone, plant, fungi. We call these humors. We take the basic mechanic of the humors and then make them more complicated, basically. So if I go to let's do it. If I go to the blessed stone and push it, it actually pushes through the board. So these blessed stones can start to like shift the board in like more dramatic ways. And if you're clever, you can really use those to like skip big parts of the level by moving a bunch of stuff out of the way. The blessed plant, we can use that. It uproots the plant as well as its neighbors, which usually is just really bad, because then you end up with a bunch of spirits. You have to deal with them. But sometimes you have to use it as a tool to, for example, it's the only way to lift a stone is to make sure that there's a blessed plant next to a stone, and then you absorb the blessed plant, and then you also get a stone spirit, so you can go do something with that stone spirit. Oh, we're meeting a healer, which is one of the other creatures in the Wilderplace world. She heals you, so she'll basically dump a little bucket of antidote on you and banish one of the spirits. So we'll see the consequences of that in a second here. But yeah, one of those spirits was banished, and now I can enter the spirit world. Oh, and then there's this new creature here, which is a demon, and the demons are only awake in the dream world, and they're kind of like create this like risk reward system for entering the dream world, because if there's a demon, you get all the benefits of entering the dream world, but then you have to like deal with whatever damage the demon ends up doing. So demons will uproot obstacles and transfer now I'm really stuck right now.
Yeah.
The healer here has a spirit, so healer can't do anything. I have spirits. I only have 1 hit point, so I'm in trouble. I'm gonna have to just turn into a tree. Yeah. Oh yeah, there's another question here. It sounds like the music was sort of a simulation too. Did you see that, Micah? Which
Yeah, I was
is
thinking.
true.
I was
Yeah.
thinking about how to respond. Like, there's 2 ways that I would say that's true. Like, the first is that the music is definitely driven a lot by the game state from the main thread, which is where all the regular game stuff happens, and that's kind of like a simulation in and of itself. But then also, like in the music sequencing engine, there are some kind of feedback loops that determine what the pitches should be. So whenever a note plays, like it gets constrained to like whatever the leading key is, like pitch. I call it a pitch class set, but it's like a kind of like a key, like in chord changes. The notes are getting constrained to that, and the thing that determines that, it's at this point it's actually not that complex, but for a while it was very complex. Like it was like this kind of random blending of different motifs that would be taking the lead on like what's the core key at any given moment. But yeah, I have a talk about that I can share. I'll post that on my Twitter, or I'll post a link in here actually if you're curious. I've talked about it in more detail.
Okay, I'm actually trying a different approach to solving this level than I've tried before, which might actually work. No, it's not gonna work. Well, yeah, I think I'm in trouble here. I thought I was being clever, but the problem is I can't get to the exit. The exit's under this stone here, and unfortunately, it's blocked. What can we do? Right now we can enter the spirit world, and then we have 2 demons. Oh, I don't think I mentioned this, but the blessed fungi gives you infinite moves in the spirit world. So you're no longer constrained to just moving 3 times. You can kind of move freely, which again...
There's a catch though.
Yeah.
Which is you can't leave until you find another mushroom.
Right. But I could, if I wanted to, go and like gather up all the spirits here, and then, man, I'm like playing these levels that I've beaten so many times but barely thinking, and like I can't figure them out right now. I'm blaming the live stream, but I mean, I don't think I'm gonna beat this level. I'm gonna leave that to the viewer's imagination. This level is pretty representative of some of the later levels, which give the player a lot more agency in terms of how you solve it. There's definitely more than one solution, and there's probably solutions that Tom and I and Micah haven't even thought about, because these levels just have a really big possibility space. And then I would say that's a theme of the game's arc too, is it starts with puzzles that are maybe have one single solution, and then you get to puzzles that have multiple solutions, and then you get to these puzzles that are really open-ended, and then there's an end game section that I'm not going to spoil that is really, really open-ended, where you are kind of solving puzzles of your own creation. I'm not going to show that off, but if you want to experience what that's like, you have to beat the game. I wanted to ask a couple, let's see, could Jesus build a puzzle game so hard even he himself cannot complete it? I think Jesus could. I don't know. Does he have infinite time in heaven to continue to try to beat his game? I don't think so. That's my final answer.
I think there's a different theology in Wilderplace, so it's hard to say.
Yeah, it's true. There's no Jesus in Wilderplace.
Wait, so not to spoil Wilderplace, but like Wilderplace has some really complex themes, and I enjoyed that while we were working on the game. Like, I'll just say there's very much I mean, this isn't everything, but there's stuff about like chaos and order, and I definitely thought a lot about that when I
I
was.
think you can read into the themes quite a bit if you want to.
Yeah,
it's fun too.
I try
Some
to be
good
pretty,
social commentary.
try to be open with that stuff, though. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think we're gonna wrap up pretty soon. I want to ask a couple final questions though to Micah and Tom.
Yeah, shoot.
Micah, when are you gonna release the Wilderplace album?
You know, I don't want to keep you on your toes, so let's say hopefully within the next 6 months to a year.
Six
months
to 6 years.
1 year.
Yeah.
I mean,
That'd be
when I get a chance,
Mhm.
like I would love
Yeah.
to do that.
Yeah.
The other thing I want to release is I would like to release more of the code, like
Yeah.
you know, but that takes time to extract it. So
I just crashed the game because I tried to open the editor's tools in the middle of a level.
Yeah.
that definitely happens.
It's fine. Cool.
Yes, final. Yes, definitely. Let's do it. The trick is going to be to record like actual notes from the game into the audio software
Right.
to get like high quality, but to have it actually be generated from the game. That would be what I would want to do.
Right. Yeah, maybe I build you like a special synthesizer mode in Wilderplace that lets you kind of quickly arrange the levels and like.
Oh yeah, I'd love that, Saman.
Yeah, we should do that.
I mean, we could even release that. That would be cool.
Yeah.
Potentially.
If enough people are interested, absolutely.
If enough people are interested and are buying copies of the game, that will sustain this.
Yeah. What's next for you, Tom, with games, with your games career?
With
I feel like now that you've had a little taste, you're like, I wanna keep designing puzzles, or yeah.
No, man. I kind of want to go back to playing games.
Yeah.
I haven't done that in a while.
Yeah.
I would work on another game, but I think I'm best as a collaborator, so I don't know. I'd have to find another project to work.
What are you excited about right now?
To play?
Games wise, yeah.
Oh man, I want to play Tunic. That game looks amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of want to finish Elden Ring too, but
yeah.
I got a laundry list of indie games I want to play.
Yeah.
So.
Hey, I just bought Elden Ring for my Xbox, so maybe I'll be your moral support.
There you go. That's a nice question here about walking through the menu and the inventory.
Oh, a question.
Yeah, we got some questions. We should answer them.
Wait, I didn't see that question.
It says,
Tom, can you read it?
Can you walk through the menu and inventory features?
Yeah.
And what led you to include some of the features, and were there some features you were not able to include but wished you could?
Yes, definitely. Let's first talk about the menu. Well, there's a map that, if I wasn't cheating with the dev tools, would be very full of levels, and you'd be able to kind of like click on every level and see some stats about the level, like how many retries you had and things like that. And I really wanted this game to feel like an adventure. That's really important to me in puzzle games. I totally bounce off puzzle games if there's not like a narrative or some other like thread pulling me through them. I bounce off puzzle games. I need that narrative layer. And so that was really important to me with this game, was to create a sense of progression, both in the story as well as in like the powers that you gain as you play the game. Like I'd say Wilderplace is like if someone who wanted to design a roguelike wasn't allowed to and instead had to design a puzzle game. That's kind of like that's basically what Wilderplace is. So it has a lot of those trappings of like a Metroidvania or a roguelike, but with hand designed levels that are really carefully crafted in a really specific arrangement. And so I think like that feeling, making the game feel like an adventure, feel like a roguelike, feel like a genre that's not a puzzle game, is at the core of like why I have the menu and the inventory and stuff like that. It's also a fun chance to like fill out the lore, so each of the items when you find them, like they tell a little story. And then same with the monuments. I'm not going to spoil the monuments. I shouldn't even be on the screen. But again, they give you like some lore, and as you play the game, you uncover more of them. Oh, well, there's another part to that question. Tom, what was the other part to that question? Why have I lost it? Oh, features that I wasn't able to include, but I wished I could. There are so many. Oh, okay. The big one that's now a joke between Tom, Micah, and I was caves. I really wanted to add caves to the game. Like you go in a cave and it's dark and spooky. Yeah.
Caves.
So, yeah. We kept talking about caves. Like when are we gonna add caves things? And caves also as I had a really good concept for them. It'd be like a fast travel system. So you go down a cave and then you'd be able to emerge somewhere further away, and the caves would be all use proc gens for the levels, because they're kind of spooky and mysterious. But
can we be real? Like, we had this conversation about, all right, it's time to wrap up.
Yeah.
We need to like stop adding new features, and then
Right.
like in the same conversation, you were like, but I want to add caves. Like, we gotta have caves.
Right.
I was just face palming. I'm like, no.
Yeah.
The caves. I think, if there's another Wilderplace, we gotta have caves.
Yeah, we're saving caves for Wilderplace too. Yeah.
I had one feature I really wanted in the game, which was a hint system in the shape of a cute little bird called the hint bird, and he like shows you which spot you're supposed to move on to next. Like if you get stuck in the game and you can't progress, and you're like, what do I do? I'm like, well, right now you just look up the solutions online, and there's no shame in that. But I really wanted to have the hint bird.
I
just
agree.
Didn't happen.
Yeah, I would love to do that. I think again, if this game has more adoption and people, enough people want to play it, those are the types of things I think we would invest in. Cool. Oh, I'm gonna just leave with like a final statement here, and then we're gonna call it a stream. First of all, thanks for joining Tom, Micah, and I. We've been on this journey, me for like 3 years making this game, and Tom and Micah for like over a year now. And the game is going to be on Steam tomorrow, so you can buy it and play the full game. For the beta testers, there's definitely stuff in here that was not in any of the betas. So, there's something new worth playing for everybody here. I have some future plans with the game that really are predicated on how many people are interested in it. Like if I get some people that really want more and are interested, then there's a couple things I'm going to do. The first one is port to mobile. I think Wilderplace works super well on phones, and so if we sell 1,000 copies, I absolutely am going to do an iOS and Android version of this game, because there's nothing stopping us besides the going through the process of doing a mobile build and getting it through the app stores, because everything is hooked up with touch handling already. The game already looks and works really well on small screens. So there'd be some technical challenges we have to work through, but nothing too scary. So mobile release is number one, kind of like what's next for Wilderplace, and then doing a level editor is the other thing that I think could be really cool. Just because there is so much to explore with with these puzzle pieces, and I think that players could have a lot of fun making levels that even Jesus couldn't beat. I think I'm going to call it. Any final questions? Otherwise, I'm hungry.
I'm hungry too. Loot boxes, yes. NFTs.
All right, we're really gonna shut the stream down.
Hey, we lost all our viewers. That's weird.
Yeah, right. Oh God, Micah. No, I'm really excited for everyone to try this game out and like let me know what they think. So it's gonna be out in the world. Take care, everybody.
All right.
Yeah, thanks everyone for coming too. This was really fun.
Yeah.
Hopefully more streams.